there's a lot of opportunities coming to Indonesia, saying that first is of course the economic growth, giving more jobs to engineers in Indonesia.
Project management and cost management team.
Correct.
And those are they play a vital part because you have to get the cost right.
Correct.
And the cost forecasting has to be correct. So the only way to mitigate that is upfront procurement. And you can only do that. You've got to get your design correct to stage 4, so that you can actually. You only got to look around. You've got to get into the environment, the weather disasters around the world at the moment. If we continue the way we're going, we will destroy this planet.
Don't forget to visit, subscribe, and follow our YouTube channel and Spotify Nusantara Academy, and turn on notification to stay updated on other exclusive content.
Yeah, funding.
I thought they will use their own data centers to their own facilities. For example, the white elephants, they do it by themselves, not procure to searching for the
that's
other.
different. That's
Oh,
different.
that's a different
There's
case.
a lot of players that would like to have their own data
Their
center.
own data centers.
But a part of that, there's also
services,
the
right?
customer who is looking for a third-party data center like us. The other one that on the LLE, that yes, that's true that Indonesia still does not have or can manufacture by our own. When we build or construct the data center, we found that the Western customer would like to have the Western brand.
Okay.
They do not want to have the Chinese brand. While the Chinese brand, sometimes they are okay. They are okay with the Chinese brand as well. But it's difficult. You are having those, for example, that 50 megawatts, and then you have a mixed brand. It's also difficult to do the operation and maintenance. So that's also very challenging. But then, even though we are buying from the Western brand, doesn't mean that all the manufacturing we can bring from, for example, from the US brand, we bring from US because the cost is high.
Correct.
Europe also high. The most economical one is from China.
Are you new in data centers? This course is for you. You'll uncover the fundamental principles and guidelines essential for constructing a top-notch data center. Scan QR code below to register.
But do they accept it? That's the question, sir.
The brand is still Western, but
okay.
only manufactured in China.
China, okay. So
and then there's all the demands come to China. So there's also problem with the manufacturing speed because of this and that in China, and then the logistics. When it comes to send those equipments to Indonesia through Singapore, there's congestion in the port when they are sending here. So there's a lot of problems that can cause delays on delivering the projects.
So based on experience, is 2 years is applicable to
at this
build
moment?
At this moment,
yes, it's applicable. 2 years.
At this moment now, it's quite okay, but from the pandemic 2022 or 2021 is quite delayed sometimes.
Especially if you started to build the first data center or the first module. Yeah? But then I found that if you are copying the exactly the same design to the next building or the next facilities, then it can go faster.
The first one is the challenges one.
The first one is the challenges.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
But
especially
if you're replicating the
Yeah.
design,
Yeah.
then you can pre-order
Yeah, and
equipment.
the importance
Oh.
that already mentioned also from Chris, that the importance is the design.
Yeah.
The design need to be firm.
the design need to be firm, and also you can speed up from typically 2 years, maybe even better than 2 years. Right?
Yeah, I mean, you could probably get it down to sort of 18 months, something like that.
It's possible.
You know,
It's possible, right? 2
It's
years.
possible. 18
Yeah.
months is possible.
Basic on your experience in Indonesia. We're talking
in
Indonesia.
Indonesia, it's probably going to be a little more difficult.
So
Anyway, I'm still have confidence.
I still have
18 months
confidence.
is still applicable for the second facilities.
For the second facilities.
Yes.
For the first one, maybe most challenging one, but if
You
you
learn a
replicate,
lot of mistakes from the first building,
first
and
one.
then you fix everything in the second
In the
and
second
third buildings.
Yeah. We're looking. Well, in my past company, they were looking at doing the second 5 megawatt within a 12-month period. So that's quite good.
That's quite good.
But they had already pre-ordered all the LLE equipment.
Oh, the forecast of to procure early is also very crucial to
Yeah,
finish everything, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so typically 2 years we still optimist to get the new greenfield data center in Indonesia. So regarding the artificial intelligence on the future data center design, Pak Chris, you want to add the implication of this artificial intelligence in the future? Is it applicable regarding our resources, and the people here also need to take a lot of advice from the expert coming from you, especially?
Yes, I mean AI is going to explode over the
Okay.
next 3 to 4 years, probably. Nobody can actually guess how it's going to go, but what they're saying is that AI, because of the GPUs rather than CPUs, they take more power, more energy, more cooling, and they're bigger. They're a bigger footprint than the servers that we've got now. They probably will get smaller and get more efficient over time, but this is completely new technology that nobody really is aware of and where it can go. An average rack in a data center at the moment, 2.5 to 7 kilowatts for colo, a rack. They're actually predicting 50 to 70 kilowatts in a rack. 50 to 70 kilowatts.
So the AI implication is to aim the energy efficiency itself? Or?
No, it's the effects, because they're all graphics processors. They need so much power to drive them. Power then needs cooling.
Correct.
Yeah. So the designs, I think they've got to look into another way of cooling. Now, I think it'll go with in-rack cooling in the end. In-rack cooling's been around for probably 10 years in the West. It's never really taken off because it's too expensive and time-consuming to install. Every rack has got chillers, fans,
Correct.
pipework connections, electrical connections, whereas standard data centers, you've got your fan walls or your crack units down the wall and it's just blowing air in. That's not going to work with AI because of the heat that's dissipated from these GPUs. So that's got to be looked at. The bigger footprint, how much bigger does a data hall have to be? And the other thing is, how much are we going into AI? I've got my standard data center, 2-3 meg. I want to put a section for AI. How much do I need? How much power? How much cooling do I need to allow for? There's so many anomalies that could happen. If you allow for too much AI, the data center will cost you a fortune and you may never recoup your money. It could. You know,
Cannot break even.
no.
Not good for the investors.
Not good for the investors. And then obviously environmental issues.
Oh yeah.
You know, more power, more grid. How are you? The last 10 years have been driven to greener
Yeah, the
data
green.
centers,
Correct.
and now we're getting this monster that's being developed that's taking 70% more electricity. What's that going to do on the Indonesian grid network? There's a lot to think about for AI, both for the designers, for the developers, and from the customer as well.
So what are you thinking also, Pak Steph, when we are mentioning the AI in data centers for the futures?
Okay, there are several solutions that already been provided in the market. As Chris mentioned, the first is for cooling and
For the
energy
cooling systems
efficiency.
and
That's already exists actually. Technically, we can use it. And you're correct, Mbak Intan, that the objective is to reduce the energy consumption. Actually, however, there's always challenges on that because in one data hall, if you put all those servers, it doesn't mean that you are in the homogeneous condition, meaning that all the servers or the racks will use more or less the same power capacity, meaning putting the same, producing the more or less the same heat, but always dynamic. So actually AI can help that, but it's not easy and it's costly. Based on my past experience, we always provide that solution and we provide offer to the customer whether they would like to have those solution because it can also give benefits to the customer actually. But when it comes to when the customer asks about okay how much is the reduction versus the power cost, then it will be very challenging because nobody can determine that, can predict that, right?
Okay.
While at the same time, as an operator, we also expect that the customer would like to add more price or more cost for us to do the investment. So again, for the data center players, actually, if we are we are talking about green and we would like to use AI, then we need to openly discuss with our customers on
Okay.
how we can achieve or we perform this green initiative together. Because for me, green is for everybody, for the concern of not only for the data center players but also the customer that we really care for our future generation. So we need to work together on that. The second is predictive maintenance. That easy, I think. Predictive maintenance using the IoT, try to find the anomaly of our equipments. But again, it is also costly. Whether the data center player have a commitment to do that kind of investment,
Okay.
because especially in Indonesia, it's cheaper to pay workforce as compared to the investment of this AI solution.
So AI also will be there is a less workforce will be needed if AI is implemented in data centers.
Actually, the workforce will be less, but again, the AI can only give the recommendation. The decision should be made by human. That's from my opinion. The other one is for DCIM, the data center infrastructure management. I know there's a lot of room that AI can help on that. But again, it will be also costly to put those AI algorithm is easy, I guess. But putting all the knowledge base to and then do the predictive analysis is something else. Okay. Anyway, in summary, actually AI can help
AI can help.
for the data center to run in the optimum way. But the challenge is how we do the calculation on the investment versus the cost that versus the cost.
Versus the cost.
Which one is more profitable?
Is on your past experience, this is also the aim for the white elephants to have the AI technology applied and pushed to all of the data centers? globally
No.
worldwide to implement it?
I don't think that'll happen. I think AI data centers or areas they're going to be specific, client specific. I think otherwise it's not going to work. You know, there will be standard data centers being built and being run, but I think you're going to be looking at AI specific centers.
So it
for
depends
the
also for
future.
the clients to
Yeah.
maybe specifically request the AI
Yeah.
to
Yes.
reduce the
Yeah, I
cost
mean,
for the grid, the electricity.
Anyway,
Does a bank need AI?
yeah.
Maybe not.
Anyway,
Maybe not.
the
Yeah.
client or concern is only the cost.
Okay.
Sorry to say.
It is.
As long as it's working.
As long as
and-
working,
and
then that's all.
the price is good. That's all.
For them, is the real reduction of the cost is the real game.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if you are using AI, if you are using human, they don't care about that. Actually,
Okay, so somehow the technology advancement is also happening, but it depends on the users itself. Do they need it, or do they just, as long as it's working for the several long time years with the good prices, that also can do, right? Okay, so we will touch about the talent availability in Indonesia. The booming of data centers is happening until 2030, maybe more than that. But also we need to make sure the skill and efficient workforce applicable and also available in Indonesia. So I want to ask Pak Steph, what is your comment, also the strategies to make sure that all of the talent availability is also available in Indonesia, to make sure the data center construction projects is happening and on time within 2 years.
yeah. Having a good talent is really very essential for Indonesia in data center industry. So the talent acquisition strategy is also very important. I know that we need to develop that. We still need to develop that. I need to admit that in Indonesia we need to develop that. But we need to go far beyond not only providing them with necessary skill and necessary knowledge, but also on building their character, their attitude, building them to have a self-confidence, and then to question everything, right? That they can be put as a similar position with the overseas engineers. So actually, we always need to give a chance to them and build. I know that there is always need some time to do that. And
Are you an engineer, consultant, or policymaker? This course is for you. You'll gain invaluable insights into the latest industry trends and best practices. Scan QR code below to register.
added to that, of course, is very theoretical training, certifications, always there. The other thing that I haven't found that actually as a data center operators, we also need to build a strong collaboration with our vendors, especially for all those LE brands that we are using in our data center. So our engineers can always keep updated on what is the the trends, the technologies, and of course make them really an expert in this field. Sorry to say that sometimes there's also lack of skilled people or professional people in the vendors in Indonesia. That there also depends on overseas people. For example, one of my vendors, they depends on the overseas. But whenever we try to chase, they go to Singapore. Singapore cannot. Then Hong Kong cannot. And go to Europe. Okay, Europe can do that. Can help us.
We still
had the
rely on
same.
Singapore, right?
Not really, actually.
It's
In Asia, there's
Europe,
also problems.
You know, you're relying on Europe, and some of them have got satellite offices, maybe in Singapore or China or Australia, but they've probably not got the technical capabilities. You know, you normally end up they'll send a guy out from maybe Singapore who's supposed to be an expert. You'll end up then having a conference call with the guy in Europe, the technical guy, telling him how to fix the problem, you know. And when you're looking at 6-7 hours time difference, that's really difficult.
So it's not effective.
No, it's not.
Okay.
You know, and maybe you want somebody out on the ground now. You know, something's broke. I need fixing. I'm in the middle of commissioning. My switchgear's broke. I've got to fly someone out from Europe.
Yeah, that's right.
You know.
And not to mention, I've experienced worst case. The expert from Europe at that time would like to have their summer holiday first.
Yeah, never have a European breakdown in August and September because they're on holiday.
Yes. they switch off the phone, Pak. Even though your data center blew up, on holiday.
And nobody can replace this guy.
Oh,
That's
no,
what-
no. How many times have we heard that? He's the only guy that knows this. Hang on a minute, how big's your company? Come on. But I mean, you know, a silly example of doing something in Indonesia. Testing and commissioning is the most critical part of
Correct.
any data center. Every test instrument has to have a calibration certificate. There's nobody in Indonesia that can calibrate anything.
So you need to hire or
Goes to
flying your
Singapore.
friends from Singapore
It goes to Singapore.
just to do the
Yeah.
testing commissioning,
Yeah.
pass the result.
To get a certified testing
Testing.
unit of anything, whether it be HVAC, whether it be electrical, it's got to go to Singapore. So you're looking at 5-6 weeks for someone to calibrate it. You know, this is crazy.
So there is a lot of room of improvement
Yes.
regarding the talents for Indonesia, right?
To be honest, there's good opportunities. If somebody in Indonesia set up half of the businesses that we need in data centers, they could make a good life out of it, good business.
And I guess this is also the message for all those vendors who supply to data center, so they can build actually this capability on doing the calibration. Because at this moment, as far as we can do, we always ask our vendors that all the equipments that bring to on site to our data center should be calibrated first, and then we should get the documentation.
Is it really complicated to do the calibration
It's
itself?
really complicated.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh, okay.
even they have the certification, and then when we do the installation and do the before the pre-testing and commissioning, we found out that it needs to be calibrated.
Yeah, that's the bit. And calibration normally will only last for 12 months. And then you have to have it recalibrated. Because if it's not calibrated,
Yeah. What is the impact if not calibration?
you don't know if it says it's 36 degrees and it's actually 42 degrees in the room. You know, that's what calibration is about.
Is it to make sure that what is showing is actually what
accurate.
is measured,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it's accurate.
Okay.
And I'll tell you a funny story.
Another funny story.
Another funny story, right? So, I was trying to source a hearing loop, right? So, you put the hearing loop in the reception, and they have a little button to press, and if somebody's deaf, they can switch to hearing aid, and they can hear and talk to the other person louder, right? So I couldn't source a hearing loop anywhere in Indonesia. So I said to the local project manager, I said, come on, we got to get a hearing loop. He went, what's one of them? So I explained. I said, come on, this is, a hearing loop. If somebody is less abled, needs a hearing aid to go to work, how do they go to work? He went, they stay at home.
Oops.
That was good.
That's really important to make sure that all of the equipment is working,
Yeah.
not only well, but also can be testing, right? And testing right.
And I also would like to share another story during the projects. Yeah. We experienced a problem with our cooling systems, which just have a advanced system using software to control everything. But excuse me, we found problem that it's not working properly at that time. We always work closely with the vendors and also the principals to do that. But we found that those people always follow the book, the rules,
The
textbook,
guidance, the text,
guidance
the
from the book.
data sheet.
Try this, try that, doesn't work.
Okay.
And I need to be proud to my technical team. They are very creative actually. They try to find out on how to solve that, even though it took months.
Okay.
But finally, they can fix the problem, Chris, without the guidance from the principal and the vendors. And now my that technical team is the expert actually, as compared with those principal.
Okay.
But it is a rare situation. It's a rare problem that. But again, for me, I'm always proud that actually Indonesian people is very creative. They can try to find
To find a way
a way
to
on,
solve
on
the
how to
problem
solve the problem creatively.
creatively.
Yeah,
That's a
Yeah.
part of growth mindset.
and it makes sense actually. It makes sense, and it's not
It's not
something
really
that's
something-
funny.
Yeah.
No.
But they're very tenacious as well. If there's a problem, they've got a problem. They won't give up, which is a great thing. No, honestly, they will keep going and keep going and keep going.
Yes.
Maybe their lack of knowledge hinders it a little, but they will keep trying and keep trying and keep trying because they want to solve the
They want to
problem.
solve. Those kind of attitude is quite.
Yeah, it is
really
a
great.
positive
There's a
attitude.
positive attitude
Positive
of
attitude, yeah.
Indonesian.
To finding a way, even though we are lacking of
Yeah.
somehow knowledge, but the attitude itself to find a way
Yeah,
to solve the problem is there.
Even if it's spending hours on a call with somebody from Singapore or the West or somewhere, they'll keep going and keep
Yeah.
going.
Somehow lacking also a language barrier, that they
Yeah.
can still
That's true.
that can also seeing the other way to find the solutions,
Yeah.
right? Oh, okay. That's the Indonesia team that we need to be proud of. So the trends. So data centers will be coming for the years in terms of the constructions. The AI somehow helpful, but it depends on the users. But the trends itself, Pak Steph, what do you see the trends in data centers? It will be coming bigger and bigger in terms of the megawatt. Or maybe we heard that we are also having a new location from the Jakarta, Greater Jakarta, go to the Batam. So what do you see are the trends?
Okay. The first one is green initiative or green buildings. So more and more customers, overseas customers especially, they are asking about what is your green program, what the action that you are doing to bring green initiative to your data center and services. The next is the adoption of technology solution. I found that lately there's building infrastructure management that is quite interesting. Before you do the construction, you do the modeling, the 3D modeling,
Yeah.
and put everything in the software. I found there's a US based software. It's really good, but still I think it still need time to
Adapt.
adopt that, because I found that every projects they are entering, they need to do the customization, meaning they need to work closely with the users
Okay.
to define the modeling, and it will take time. Not to mention cost,
Good
right?
cost, yeah.
But there's a hope
There's
on having that, because the BIM promised us not only the 3D modeling but also define the work sequence. That's the most important thing, because once we have that, then it's easier to do the projects.
Is the software is also to tracking the historical data maybe changing in those data centers? Or-
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
exactly.
They said
Oh,
so,
They said
but
so.
it need to be proven, right, Chris?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Yeah.
can you also foresee this green initiative? Also, the 3D modeling will be booming for the next data centers.
Well, yeah, it's getting more and more important. But as Stephanus said, it's difficult. There's a lot of parties involved.
Correct.
You know, you've got a structural and steel model, you've got an architectural model, you've got an MEP model. They all have to fit together.
Correct.
You know, if it works, if it fits together, and the people have got the technical ability to put it together, you know, you can run clash detection software. So if a pipe's going through a steel beam, something like that, it'll flag it up. You know, because you remember all designs start on a flat sheet of paper, and then they're inputted into the model, and this, which is probably leading up to AI, isn't it? You know, it's it builds a complete model of the building, and then it's also very good for operational purposes because you can pick a pump
Okay.
anywhere in the building, drill into that pump, and if it's set up correctly, it'll tell you the asset name, the manufacturer, the date it was installed, and where you can procure a replacement part for it.
So
And that,
basically, it's like all transparency data of all of your equipment installed in your data center. You can just click by.
yeah, it can be if you go down to that level.
Oh.
That's the promise.
That's okay. That's interesting.
Yeah.
So it will be easier for everyone who work behind those data centers to understand the historical data, and also if they want to procure another, they can get also the easier versus maybe asking for somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, no, the standard way of doing it, there's a pump broke down. So the engineer gets on the computer, this is pump P02753,
Right.
click OK, so, right, it's 3 kilowatt, right, so it's a Danfoss. So where do I get that from? Okay, find somewhere else, where's the supplier? But if the model is put together correctly, all you need to do is click on that pump on the model, and all that information will be there. So it cuts down engineers' time, procurement time.
Okay.
Yep.
That will be happening perhaps in the next years, or the next
Yeah.
coming years.
And the other one that I want to also to add, this is based on my experience. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's two models, especially here in Indonesia, that if you want to build a data center, so the first approach is to depends on your vendors or technology solution that you will bring to the data centers. They will guide you on how to build the data center, on how to put all those equipments, how to do the capacity planning, etc., etc. But for me, there's also another approach actually, which is from the business process. And
The business process.
Okay, yes. And I always started with my past experience in building the data centers, that I always started with the end-to-end business process. So I really understand what is the simple business process, make it as simple as possible, while at the same time we can still control that correctly. And then all those equipments need to follow those business process. That will make easier if we do the operation.
Okay.
That's my experience, of course.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it will be also make everything
And
easier for the business
exactly.
process,
Then
right?
that, I guess it will, from my vision, it will be the next trend. Actually, there's more data center players who will be using this business process approach.
Okay. For the green initiative, Pak, because some of the users is asking, maybe for the next few years, they will asking, what is your green initiative? Is it somebody somebody will give you the certificate to make sure that, oh, okay, because we have this certificate, we are having the green data centers here? Or is it just only you, you know,
Okay.
just present that this is the initiative, and then the user say, okay, I believe in you.
Okay. I always put this green initiative with two categories as
Okay.
for a simple one, external and internal.
Internal.
So for external, it will depends on your design, that you are working closely with the professional consultant to put the design. And second is the renewable energy that provided from the power supply.
Okay.
The renewable energy, that's includes either it is the certification only to offset the usage of your power usage, and of course the real renewable energy that directly brings or entering your data centers. From the internal side is always the business process that you define on how you operate efficiently, because
Correct.
for me the main objective of this green initiative is how to reduce the energy
The
usage,
energy usage, power consumption.
how you can operate correctly, how you can operate uh, 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 in an optimum way. Then of course it will requires a continuous improvement, because you need to monitor regularly and to see what else that you can improve to the operation. Um, then there also technology adoption that you may consider to use.
To use.
Uh-huh. So yeah, that's from me. Maybe Chris want to add.
No, not really. I mean, I don't know.
Any data centers in UK, for example, that's already make sure that okay, we are a green data centers. They publish it online and
Yeah,
to
there's-
attract some of the customers.
Yeah, I mean, the green data center now, it's the buzzword at the moment from the customers. You know,
Okay.
cut your carbon footprint. We need to be carbon neutral,
Correct.
right? Now, how you can achieve that, I don't know, but I know a company that were working on developing a data center in around London, sinking it in the ground, having 3 separate utility supplies, no generators, just batteries.
Just batteries.
Just
okay.
batteries. Now, sounds good, but will it work? And how much does it cost? You know, these are the things you have to look at. And by the way, the project never got off the ground or under the ground.
I heard in UK there's a solution from Rolls-Royce using nuclear.
Hmm?
Using nuclear in UK from Rolls-Royce.
Yeah.
Is that already implemented?
I don't think it's there yet, but they're
It's not
trying.
there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there is a possibility that the power is coming from nuclear,
Yeah. Well, you look at,
batteries, nuclear.
look at hydrogen. You know, that's going to be the next big thing. They've managed to sort out how to get power from hydrogen safely. Scares me, but I don't know. I mean, I just remember hydrogen bomb. Oof. Staying away from that. But, you know, hydrogen is going to start to replace fossil fuel in vehicles.
Correct.
You know, we can also do that in data centers, generation. You know, in the West they look at powering generators not with diesel oil but with gas.
Okay.
Technology is moving all the time, and we have to strive to save this planet, to provide and make sure that our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren have a planet, you know, because the way we're going, you only got to look around, you've got to go and see the environment, the weather disasters around the world at the moment. If we continue the way we're going, we will destroy this planet.
Yes. Strongly
will.
agree on that, Chris.
Yeah.
Yeah, strongly agree.
You get my support on that.
Yeah.
That's for the green initiatives.
Just want to add what Chris mentioned, that gas is also the alternatives that we can use, but at this moment for Indonesia it's more makes sense and economical way if the power supplier provide that. If for data center directly we are using that, then we got problem with the stability of the gas pressure to come to our data centers to support our generators. We do have the solution on that. We need to add more equipments, but it also costly.
Yeah, it's a very high pressure gas supply line,
Okay.
which brings other dangers into it.
Exactly,
Dangerous.
and then there's also spatial,
You know, you've got your manifold systems, you've got
Spatial
special
storage,
generators, special
and the
storage.
customer will come. Oh, there's all explosive
Yeah.
things.
That's
So I do not
things.
want to come to your data center, something like that. So
Yeah.
There is some risk behind if you
Exactly.
want to implement some of
Exactly.
the very
Exactly.
advanced technology.
Yeah.
So nowadays, I guess the Indonesian government also try to provide hydrogen as the fuel. So we are
Is
looking
it more
forward.
safely from gas
Yeah.
for the
it's-
hydrogen?
Yeah,
Right?
and it's
Okay.
green.
It's
So
green
we are
also.
looking that for enough capacity to support for data centers.
Wow. Gas, nuclear, hydrogen, it will be great. We have the risk behind, but as long as the
Yeah.
technology is there, we
Yeah.
still have it, right?
While for solar panel and
hope it's solar panel.
wind
Yeah.
wind turbine, it requires a huge land
Area.
Yeah.
Of course, Indonesia there's plenty of land, but if you are looking to provide in inner city or in the industrial area, is nobody wants at this moment to provide those huge land, and the investment actually is quite high, especially on the batteries to make the stability of the power to be supplied to your data center.
Okay.
But you can also start in simple ways. I mean, trees, plants, building a data center with like a living wall, that's helping the environment. They're not massively expensive things. And I know it's only a tiny thing, but it's a start. For every data center you build you plant X amount of trees. You fill the place with plants, which absorb carbon dioxide,
Yeah.
which can help. Otherwise now it's difficult, but there's such a massive heat output
Yeah.
from a data center that goes to waste. How can this be tunneled in to making maybe electricity for a small village or something? The technology is there. It's another cost, though.
The question, who you'd like to invest to do that, right?
Well, that's it. Yeah.
That's also the question. For the locations, we are hearing that major booming also coming to Batam from Jakarta, Greater Jakarta to Batam. What the comment you can foresee for the next booming in this island?
Okay. I already have that vision actually long time ago. It's about 15 years ago that I'm seeing that Batam is the next data center.
Oh, so it's been talking in the 15 years back.
But only small capacity that already been built there, like PLN and the government auto department that put for their own data centers, but not from the commercial perspective. However, currently there's more and more players coming to Batam, and I believe that it is related to the moratorium from Singapore government.
Correct.
There are less of capacity in Singapore unless you can reach, if I'm not mistaken, 1.2 PUE if you would like to have a new data center in Singapore. So Singapore have a moratorium to extend their data center business in Singapore to Batam and Johor.
Correct.
So they have those moratorium to Indonesia government as well to Malaysia government to allow them to have business in those area. However, from Indonesia perspective, it's a bit challenging because our competitors, be frank to you, our competitor is Singapore, right?
Okay.
So if you are having a local players is Indonesia, that directly you have a competitor in Batam in the same area of Indonesia. Okay, but for overseas players who also have their data center in Singapore as well Indonesia, they will have an internal competition. If the customer comes to Indonesia, they have a selection: go to Jakarta or go to Batam, right? But internally, they have the sales will have a competition. Come to Singapore, come to Indonesia, right?
Compare.
So that kind of situation is happening. But yes, for the international link that comes to Batam, it's more competitive as a location as compared to Jakarta or
Jakarta.
Java Island. However, there will be a challenging issue when it comes to the skilled people that will operate the data center in Batam. If you want to have a cost efficient, then meaning that you need to hire a Indonesian people, but Indonesian people, lots of people stays in Java Island, especially in Jakarta. Then you need to add cost to bring those people to Batam.
To Batam.
While if you hire people from Singapore, it will be costly. You need to pay also the working permit because it's Indonesia authority, right? So that kind of situation. Not to mention on doing the construction, it will not easy, right? Even though we understand that in Java Island, it's still skill gap, but in Batam it's more. So you still need to bring people from Java Island.
More challenges will
More
come.
challenging.
Right?
If people think okay, it's easy, come to from Malaysia, from India, probably or Singapore, still it is costly.
Oh, okay.
But again, from the market perspective, it's sexy actually.
Yeah, it will open some of the new opportunities
Yes.
to Indonesia.
But then for Indonesia itself, actually now the next challenge is how to define the next city, not only staying in Jakarta, but what is the next city? And from my point of view, actually it will goes related to the international link that will comes to that city.
Are you mentioning Nusantara, Pak?
Yeah,
Yeah.
can also, but it will drive by the international link that will or international cable that goes to
Goes
that
to the
location.
locations.
It will attract the overseas customers to come and then expand their business.
Do you think the new city is going to affect that?
A new city, I think, can affect, but it will take longer time, Chris. Knowing that the infrastructure is quite challenging at this moment, I know that Kalimantan is a strategic location because no active mountain over there, so it will not affected by earthquake. But the infrastructure will be highly cost that need to be put on that one. The networks, the power capacity. If you are building a city, for example, only for offices, etc., you know that you can have a small capacity as compared if for data centers. Not to mention that for data center we need more than one power plant with diverse road.
Correct.
But will the global companies go to that city? You know, that's the thing.
Being a global company, I guess everybody, when I talk to them, we always put ourselves as wait and see. I believe that the state-owned company of Indonesia will come first because it was directed by the government. You must have.
Well,
And I know one of our national
No
data
choice.
center decided by the government will go to that Nusantara.
Okay. So maybe the timeline will be Jakarta, Greater Jakarta, Batam. Next, perhaps in going to Nusantara. Do you have a feeling?
If you are from the business perspective, I always put as I always see the data,
Correct.
right? Surabaya may be the second one.
Surabaya.
Yes.
That's
Why?
an
Because
interesting
the
one.
second largest economy
Happening in Surabaya.
happening in Surabaya, and
Okay.
Surabaya can reach the eastern part of Indonesia,
Indonesia.
Easily. You can see that all the telcos usually have two nodes in the west area, which is Jakarta area, and then in Surabaya area.
As the east.
However, the challenge is still there, which is I already mentioned to you, the international cable or the subsea cable that comes to Surabaya needs to be established to make that city as an attractive location for the future, data center.
centers. Are you agree with that, Chris?
yeah, I think so. I mean, it's got to move away from Jakarta, and pretty quickly. 'Cause
Pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's overpopulated. It's stressed. and it is. So it will move out. But as Stefano said, it depends on who wants to go to that area, what the connectivity is, what power is available in the area. If it's going to cost too much money to put the infrastructure in, they won't go there. They'll take the easy choice, and that'll always happen.
And there's a need in Indonesia actually to have the second city or even the third city, because all the connectivity hubs stays now in Jakarta, which is actually very critical,
Yeah.
right? And I guess the government already realized when it happens to be that in cyber building there's a fire incident.
Oh yes,
So,
that's fire incident.
Yeah, at that time the Ministry of Information and Communication also contacted me. Oh, how come
Yeah.
the tier one of all the hubs stays there?
Yeah.
What will
Why?
happen? And
Yeah. I still remember I cannot check out one of my Shopee can we but I cannot check out my Shopee, and then this because of the data center is having a fire accidents
Yes.
there. So it's really critical to have
It's really
another
critical.
backup city
it's really critical.
or location, not only concentrated in Jakarta.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we should wrap up our podcast. I'm quite sad that it will be ended now, but I will having a podcast closing statement. So I think Pak Steph can also Pak Chris having a podcast statement. Go to the camera first, right? Okay, so Papa, can you mention the closing statement?
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Mbak Intan. It's really a nice conversation, I guess, this
Yeah.
morning with an interesting topics that brought up to the table on on data center construction, as well as all the challenges that we are facing. I hope that this initiative will always be happening and having the next interesting topics to be shared with the audience. I believe that there's a lot of data centers information or knowledge that can be shared to the audience to educate the market as well on maybe something that is a bit naughty, if I may say, that triggers ourselves to find a good solution. Right. Okay. Thank you again. Thank you, Mbak Intan.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Pak.
Chris. Thank you, Indonesia.
Thank you. And also we will have a closing statement from Pak Chris.
Again, thank you, Intan and Pak Stefano. I've really enjoyed it today. I was quite apprehensive about it at first, but I think it's gone well, and I hope that our discussions have raised food for thought for the listeners. Suggestions to them. It's a great industry to be in, and it's going to be here for a long time. It's going to be the next big boom in Indonesia. So anybody out there, if you're thinking of a career, either in construction, management, operations, we haven't really discussed operations of data centers today, which is another massive business, But it is a great industry to be in. I've been in it a long time, and I've really enjoyed it. And I still enjoy it now, to be honest. The challenges, the headaches, the screaming and bawling, the lack of
The
sleep.
tension.
Yeah, I didn't have this much grey hair 2 years ago, but
That's
since-
the reason
yeah,
you have a gray hair?
yeah, since I came to Jakarta and did a data center.
Okay.
But no, as I say, thank you everybody today. I really enjoyed it. I do hope the audience found it helpful, because we need to pass on our experience, don't we? And you need, look to the experienced people. If you're getting into this industry, don't be afraid to ask a question. Nobody will laugh at you for asking a question.
There is no stupid questions.
There isn't a
No
stupid question. No. So anyway, but thank you all.
So thank you for all of the audience. Thank you, Pak Chris. Thank you, Pak Stephanus, for sharing the valuable insights as today podcast sessions. We do hope that there is a lot of room of improvement in Indonesia, especially we will have a boom market data centers for I think more than 2030. So before we close the session, we will have a podcast group picture. This is for the unity greeting. So put your two fingers there. This is not related to any kind of political era, but we need to take a picture first. Okay.
Salam Unity.
So thank you to our listeners. Stay tuned for more episodes of podcast Nusantara, and please do not forget to subscribe, like, and comment. Salam Unity. Thank you very much. See you again for the next podcast session. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Terima kasih. Bye bye.
Enjoyed this podcast? Take it with you on the go. Find us on Spotify and never miss an episode. Just search for Nusantara Academy on Spotify and hit follow. Happy listening! Let's connect with fellow data center industry expert. Join our community at Lincoln Nusantara Digital Community to collaborate, share insights, and stay informed about the digital world right now.